so we can post it for later. And Konstantin, I'll just thank you once again for making time at the witching hour over in Germany to help share some of your story with us. Everyone, we're very, very proud and pleased to welcome Constantine Rivel, who is going to talk a little bit about his experiences as a practitioner. His focus for this session of Last Twin Cities is on the parallel organization. So this is a concept that we talk about in terms of transformation and kind of the organizational design aspect of how to approach large scale Scrum. And Konstantin's talk speaks for itself, so he'll have a lot of details to help you wrap your head around that that concept. But thanks everyone for making time for us this evening, and we will turn it over to Konstantin.
Yeah, thank you. Hi. Yeah, let me share my screen. Let me also organize the videos somehow that I can see you whilst presenting on a different monitor. Hold on. Now, yes. So, yeah, Sam, Vlad, and Dave approached me asking, what is it that we can, what I could present in this meetup? And we had a few topics, and one of them was parallel organization that I came about. And yeah, then I sat down and thought, oh my God, what is it that I'm going to present here? We had a test run last week, I believe, and I think it turned out good. Will be fun. Let me introduce myself. So I'm Constantine Rivel, born in Russia, live in Germany since 1996. I'm Scrum Master, also certified LeSS trainer, the latest one. And I'm a big LeSS enthusiast. Because I like the descaling part of it so much. And I have experience with large-scale embedded products. Yes, and now I would like you to get introduced. And for that, I'm going to share a link with you.
I was just about to be able to be shadowed.
You may want to go on mute if you're not meaning to speak.
So where do I find now? Here, here the chat. So here is a link to a Miro board. If you could just open it and join the board. And what I would like you to do is, hold on a minute. I need, I think, to hit here a button to bring all of you to me, right? What was that? Bring everyone to me here. So if you just pick a sticky note and place it somewhere here. So on the y-axis, we have the experience with LeSS, and on the x-axis, the company size that you are currently in.
I'm sorry, could you use the company size and how many years, what?
LeSS experience. So experience with LeSS on the y-axis, and on the x-axis, the company size that you're currently in.
Thank you.
It works really well. Very smooth transition to Miro.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we're done. Is anyone still moving stuff around? Okay, well, looks good. So I'm going to go quickly back to my slides. We're going to come back to this board. Well, back to the slides. So a disclaimer, all presented opinions are my personal opinions and do not express the views or opinions of my current or former employer. So what exactly does parallel organization actually mean? Well, Gene posted this on LinkedIn a few days ago, and I really liked that. Thank you, Gene. You should not just replicate your existing organizational structure or on smaller scale and call it parallel. That's brilliant. So what exactly does it actually mean? So there are two options that I know of how a parallel organization can look like. So you have a company, like you have a company that is one business entity, and inside this one business entity, you have an organization that is a traditional or former organization, and a new, less friendly parallel organization that has a less friendly structure in it. And then you start out small and you grow it. Or option number two, you have two business entities, so you actually completely spinned off a new business as a parallel organization to the original or to the former traditional business entity. So those are two ways how you could do a parallel organization, like legally, right? Two business entities or one business entity. But whether you do option one or two is not that important. It is more important to understand why is a parallel organization useful and what is critical when implementing it. And let's focus on those two questions. So why parallel organization? There are two answers. The short answer, well, Larman's law, organizations are implicitly optimized to avoid changing the status quo, middle and first level manager and specialist position and power structures. So parallel organizations are there to avoid this. But as I'm sure this is probably not very helpful to you. So that's why I also created the long answer. The long answer is, yeah, it's long. And let's start with definition of terms. Maybe you heard the term, your business agility is constrained by the technical agility, or technical agility constrains your business agility. So let's define two terms, organizational adaptiveness and technical adaptiveness. And the organizational adaptiveness is the ability to change the organizational setup. So for example, in case of LeSS, where you have many requirement areas, the easiness of moving one team to another requirement area, that would be a sign of a flexible organizational setup, or change product direction. And the technical adaptiveness would be the ability to adapt or change the direction of the technical infrastructure and the technical stack itself. So, and important is that those two constrain each other. And I forgot to say at the beginning, if you have any questions, please ask right away. I mean, like verbally, turn on your mic and ask right away. If you have questions for later, you can also post them into the chat. We'll have a Q&A after that. So let's have a look at the product development system as a system. And in this case, it's useful to use Jay Galbraith's organizational design framework. It's called the STAR model. And what we see here, this version is from 1998, and I find it useful to talk about parallel organizations or behavior in the organization. So it starts with a strategy. There is a strategy in terms of a product maybe, or something to achieve. And in order to achieve this, you need tasks, you need a structure, you need processes, you need rewards and people to do all of that. And what you can see is that those 5 elements are interconnected with each other. They are highly interwoven and depend on each other. And those 5 elements, this product development system, it also determines the behavior and the performance of the company. And the question is, when we adopt Scrum or LeSS, which of those elements do usually get actually changed? That's a question to you right now. I'm expecting you to answer. Verbally.
Can I ask a question? So
yeah,
when I think of task, I think of like, you know, the thing we create in sprint planning, right? For like a user.
Yeah.
So what does it mean in this context?
Well, work to do. What kind of work do we need to do to achieve the strategy? And here you need to think a really high level, because those 5 elements, the STAR model now, they are describing the entire product development group, or even the entire company.
And strategies in the context of product strategy, is that right? Like a product decision? Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And the people in the context of skills? You don't mean like we need to change people, right?
I mean, here you need to have the right people for the right stuff, right? I mean, for the right
Roles?
Tasks, not just tasks, that people that fit into all the other elements.
Skills, roles.
Skills, roles, yeah.
I see.
Experience.
Okay. Experience. Attitude.
Yeah. So back to the questions. What do you think? Which of those 5 elements get changed and adopted when we adopt Scrum or LeSS?
Are you saying in a typical, you go to a company and they say, hey, we want to change. Are you asking me what's the first thing they change?
Yeah, what they usually change, yes.
In most places, they change the rewards and tell everybody, if you go agile, I'll give you a big bonus.
So they don't change the rewards, they increase the bonus. Okay. Okay, so actually, in most adoptions, structure and processes get changed. Why? Because those 2 define the power structures in the company. So back to the Larman's law number 1, the organization is implicitly optimized to remain status quo, and people in especially middle management positions are interested in keeping the power structures as they are. So that's why structure and processes are the things people focus the most on. And Jay Galbraith, he claims that actually rewards, people, and tasks are, in today's world, way more important than structure and processes. And we forget, or many companies forget, or just don't do it, and they don't focus on task, people, and rewards. The problem with that is, like I said, it's a highly interwoven system, and if you change only structure and processes, it gets out of balance. And we will look at shortly. We'll look at it shortly. What happens when you bring the system out of balance? So we will use this STAR model for further discussion, but need to make sure that we all understand that all models are wrong, but some are useful. So is this model. There might be something missing, some variables here, or what. I'm sure it's not complete. And it's also, we just noticed at the beginning, the interpretation of all of these things is also quite vague. So all models are wrong, but some are useful. And this is a useful model for this exercise. And the first law of diagramming, we model to have a conversation, not like a diagram at the end. And a causation fallacy, I need to make sure we also understand every effect has a cause and we can tell which is which. This is, of course, false. And now in the next few steps, I will be presenting things with, and exaggerate a bit just to make it understandable and more, make the connection better. But of course, there will be links probably that causal links that I will point out that are stronger in the discussion, but in reality, there are more causes to an effect than just one or two. So hold on. Let's go back to this board. And now I go here. You should, for now, it's okay if you just watch the screen. So I will be explaining now the situation. And can I bring everyone to me? Yeah. Okay, good. So the situation, we have the star model and we have a completely, I tried to do this as fictitious as possible. But we have a well-established corporation with embedded products. That means the company develops hardware and software, and we have a high degree of legacy in their tech stack. We spinned off a parallel organization. We changed stuff in tasks, structure, processes. This is set up. Rewards and HR policies remain unchanged. And in terms of people, true volunteers joined the new organization. So the star here that we can see, this is just indicates, okay, here something was changed. But in terms of rewards, nothing changed. All the policies remain the same. So the question is, what is likely to happen 1 or 2 years later when we spin off a parallel organization like that? Let's have a look at that. So now further details in the setup. In terms of tasks, we have a product owner is named. We have a product backlog in place, and the product backlog consists of customer-centric items. In terms of structure, we're organized in a cross-functional and cross-component feature teams. Teams are told and expected to be self-managing and long-living. Teams are organized around product features, and the structure is flexible and is not reflected in the organizational chart. And it's also not an organizational unit. In case of less huge, teams can change areas easily. And one management layer was removed to reduce hierarchy. And by the way, if you have ideas of things to add here, just tell me and we can add it to this list here. Processes. We have a normal sprint cycle, 2 weeks. Teams are expected to collaborate with each other. Managers are expected to go see with their own eyes, and budgeting processes as legacy of the old organization are in place. Then in terms of rewards, there is employee review is conducted every 12 months. Employee reviews is done, of course, by managers. Individual target target dependent bonuses are in place, and targets are set also by managers. And in terms of people, we have pure volunteers, so people were like educated before the spin-off, before the adoption. They like are highly motivated people, eager to go all in, and highly motivated, eager to go all in. People are used to working in single function and single component teams. And based on people's career development, some are consistently subconsciously expecting a promotion, for example, pay rise, responsibility. They understand that with the change, this might be delayed or accelerated. And people were working for several years in the old company and are used to the reward system as well. And the people that were in the removed management layer either joined teams or became Scrum Masters or APOs or stayed in the old organization. So we spin off this system, and what happens? And now I want to come back to the organizational and technical adaptiveness that I introduced earlier. So the start, euphoria is high, people are motivated. Organizational adaptiveness is also high, as you can see here, the blue. Since the organization is now agile, some people expect an increase in performance. And a few months later, after the start, teams notice that the learning curve is very steep. Some people start informing their managers or Scrum Master that they cannot cope with the broadness of the items in the product backlog. Transparency uncovers hidden problems, and the organizational discovers that the legacy tech stack is very rigid. So you can see here now on the diagram, the technical adaptiveness is quite low, but the organizational adaptiveness is high. And what does it mean, this delta between those two? Well, that's pain. That's the pain the organization feels. And the organization realizes that they cannot create as much outcome as they thought they would. And management starts to get nervous and becomes busy introducing countermeasures. No more time for go see. Okay, hold on, something. I moved it to this place here. So the situation calls for fast action. The most tangible thing managers observe is that some people wish for a narrower focus. Note, some people have issues dealing with the broadness, some are fine with it. What is likely to happen? What kind of experience do decision makers have? Please take a sticky note and post your answer here around. So what is likely to happen? What kind of experience, or maybe we should turn the questions around. What kind of experience do decision makers have, and what is likely to happen? You can also place just below or on the left side to this frame. Okay, I think we have enough. Let's just go quickly through them. So a very good question here. What worked 2 years ago? I mean, as presented in the beginning, the company was organized in component teams and single function teams. So this is what they know, and this is what they have a feeling of it works. So let me remove this part here. So here the answers I prepared. So managers are used to a single function, single component setup, and they deliver products for decades this way and consider it a working system compared to the current chaos. And therefore, managers consider reducing the focus for teams and reflect it in the organizational design. So they are, for now, just thinking about it. We will come to this later. So, and we leave the situation as is, but then there is the next cycle of employee reviews. What is actually happening? What do people expect and what do they probably get? And how will this affect the other elements? So we're focusing now on rewards. There are processes, structures, tasks, people. How will this affect everything else? And let's look at this. So we have here the situation that calls for fast action and the next cycle of employee reviews. And we take now all of these together and we have a look at the effects on the product development system, step 1. And what you see here is probably now a little bit weird, but let me explain. So in terms of rewards, we have here rewards. And in the corner of rewards, we have stickies with different colors. And that means that the rewards now have an effect. If we have a green sticky here, have an effect on people. And this purple sticky over here means that people have an effect on rewards and processes have an effect on rewards too. So let's have a look at this one here. So people are used to the way how, oh, wrong word here. Employee review is conducted. So people are used to the way how the employee review is conducted. And, but they expect something to be different this time. I mean, come on, we spinned off a parallel organization, changed so many things. It must be different this time. Something must be different. In terms of processes, the budgeting processes that we have in place, they limit the available funds for monetary rewards. And now in terms of rewards, people notice that the employee reviews remain subjectives. Actually, nothing happened. The managers do exactly the same in the employee review. Some didn't get what they expected, so there is disappointment and anger. So in this group, I will divide into 2 parts. Some people made it their first priority to change the situation for the next employee review. And some people still consider it secondary and focus on getting the system actually going. So let me dive into this a little bit more. Before the spin-off of the parallel organization, people might have had ideas of how their career would look like, how will those people progress in the career, because it was well, the same thing was done in the organization for decades. and they kind of knew, okay, if they do X, then they get Y, and this is how they can make one step further. So in this case, there were some expectations, even so they might have been unconscious, those expectations. So most people are frustrated because feedback is more subjective than before the change. So managers, of course, I mean, what is the feedback that you can expect in a manager-based employee review? Is usually subjective. And most people are frustrated because the feedback is more subjective than it was before. Managers notice this staff's frustration, and combined with the wish for a narrower focus, they decide to review the removed manager, to revive the removed manager level, which is obviously a quick fix. Let's have a look what happens in terms of our adaptiveness. So effects on the product development system, again, step number 1. Previously removed manager level is revived. Managers have a smaller span of control, and which produces a false feeling of objectiveness for the employee reviews. And what else might have changed? So in terms of adaptiveness, we have the organization that now with the revived manager level seems like going down, because people then are organized with smaller span of controls, and maybe in smaller teams that have probably not much to do with each other. Technical adaptiveness, what happens actually to technical adaptiveness? Any ideas? Just please unmute yourself and shout out. What happens to technical adaptiveness in the meanwhile?
It'd be reduced because now you're going back into a focus group.
Any other suggestions?
I was thinking it might go up because that other layer of management now is staying out of their business. Out of their business.
Okay, okay. Okay, let's uncover this. It actually goes up. Why? Why does it go up? And by the way, it has nothing to do with this change here. It goes up because the time, get this away, the time delay between the start and the first change based on employee reviews and managers' observation is actually long. It's what, at least a year. So during the year, this pain actually made the people improve the technical adaptiveness somehow. They people introduced more automated testing. People became better in software craftsmanship and so on. So it improves in the meanwhile. It's a technical adaptiveness in this situation is lagging big times. It's a lagging indicator. And yeah, the question is, what else might have changed? Please just let's take a few minutes and please post your post-its here. Okay, it seems like we don't have any further. Okay, one topic comes in. Okay, let's go on. So what might have changed? So the narrower focus, to narrow focus, the product backlog transforms from customer-centric items to component-based tasks. And it's a very slow pace. And so this transformation from customer-centric to component-based tasks, this transformation is very slow, and you basically don't feel how bad it is when transforming. So what kind of effects will it have on the product backlog? And let's have a look at the step 2. Now here, let me bring all of you to me here. So now here, what we see is the things that we already saw before. They have this, what is it, pinkish tag. And step number 2, they have this blue tag. So let's start here. So to narrow focus, the backlog transforms from customer-centric items to component-based tasks. So this is the effect that now people have based with, making their decision on the tasks. And what starts to emerge, implicit team backlog starts to emerge now. Keeping an overall product backlog becomes significantly more complex. So we increase now complexity in the system, and overall sprint events become irrelevant and get canceled. Why? Because in the overall events, for example, in the overall retrospective, or in overall product backlog refinement, or in the sprint planning 1 events, people sit there, teams representatives sit there and say it's a waste of time because I pick only items that I'm focusing on, because the focus for me was now narrowed in terms of team blue, you now will work only on this focus over here, and team red, you will now work on that for the next things. So this needs to be now somehow reflected in the product backlog. That's why the implicit team backlogs start to emerge. And they say it's a waste of time to have those events because I just sit and wait here for so long until it's my turn to say something. And we can also just cancel it, and nothing, we will not see any degradation in terms of performance. It will actually make the stuff more efficient. And in terms of processes, managers don't see the need for a flexible organizational structure and introduce rigid departments responsible for architectural components. So now, since we have now implicit backlogs and the sprint events starting to get canceled, it says, well, managers say we don't need that. It's good to have this flexibility, but we actually don't use it. It's harming us more. We need to go back to reflecting the product architecture in the organizational structure. And it's now, with this introduction, it's not so easy to change teams between requirement areas. Why? Because it needs some HR processes needs to be followed to change the department code for some teams. So you see sticky notes below in different colors. Please take them and put them around what you think, what else around here in the system might have changed, or something, how these elements affect each other. I'm curious to know your opinions here too. Okay, let's have a look to the answers. I mean, they're all great. I looked at them already. More managers involved into managing dependencies. Absolutely. Definition of done changes, less integration. Yeah. This one is also good. Scrum is blamed as an inefficient use of resources. Definitely. Structure still protects turf of managers. Yeah. Protect. Hold on. No, you're moving it. Protective behavior to save my team's time. Absolutely. Yes. People start looking and or leave for different positions. Yeah. And we will have a look at that one in a moment. Reward managers with large teams. Yeah, absolutely. So what is it? Customers get screwed. Yes. So let's have a look at this one here. So effects on the product development system, step 2. How does it evolve here? So now the organization really like changed its adaptiveness with the introduction of rigid departments around the product architecture. It really did a step back. So what happens to technical adaptiveness? Now I'm expecting again, unmute yourself, just vocal feedback.
It's going to go down because people aren't working across teams.
Sorry, that was really.
Sorry, it's going to go down because people are not working across the entire code base.
Okay. Any other?
There's going to be less insight there.
James, it's you, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Any other suggestions?
Maybe it should stay level because it reaches the limit.
Let's have a look. So, wrong tool here. I would say it decreases the, do you say slope? Slope?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it might come to a, how should I say? It might begin to stagnate. What? Let's have a look what happens next. Because we are going to speed up the steps on effects on the development system. Remember, this is a lagging. Technical adaptiveness is lagging big times behind this organizational changes, right? So what we see here, let me draw it actually. What we see here is an effect from over here. What we see here is an effect from over here, and so on. So, effects on the product development system, part 3. Were there questions? No, why did I put this here? Let me check. I forgot already what I put here. Sorry, that's the wrong one. This one. Okay. Oh, no. Now I uncovered too much. Sorry, here we go. So structure, because of the changes, some people become frustrated and leave the company. Someone said it already there. And open positions create demand to hire new people. Exactly. And the question is, what kind of people, which people is the system likely to attract?
You're supposed to add the stickers.
Just shout out. Yeah. Good. Some people already started adding stickers. Yes, let's do that. Yeah. So I can already see suggestions what kind of people will this attract, and I agree. And I would like to point out, so people likely to fit into the system get hired. So what does it mean? Component teams, specialists for some tasks that for some parts of the product architecture and so on are hired. And I would like to point out it's not it's not like because some people also say, why didn't you hire top-notch people to solve your problems, right? It's the wrong question. Or the wrong approach, I think. It's better to ask which people does the system attract, and not why didn't you hire those people. Even because some people also say, oh, maybe your reward system, like your salary HR policies that don't allow you to pay so good for the people for the good people to come in. I experienced the opposite. If you really need some people, or if you really need a person with specific skills, the companies are ready to pay for it. But the problem is you need to be aware that you require those skills. And when the organization is now the story that we just did is like that, then they are more likely to attract people who are focusing on components and on single functions rather than working across the entire stack in shared code, and people who are great in software craftsmanship. Okay. Yes, exactly. Like here, hire for old culture and not new culture. So, effects on the product development system, part 3. So, what happens to the organization, to the adaptiveness of the organization, we don't know. Let's just assume it will continue like this. So we have the fluctuation rate increases. Oh, hold on, I need to bring all of you back to me. So what happens to technical adaptiveness in here?
I'm going to say it drops because you're adding new people and new thought processes and new.
Other suggestions?
What's the fluctuation rate that's increasing?
James, are you asking what that means?
Yes, sir.
So people are leaving, new people are hired.
Oh,
that's fluctuation rate, right?
Churn in the people.
Yeah.
Okay. Staff churn. Right.
No. Okay. Let's rename it.
Hey, I struggle to have one language as my primary. So anybody who does multiple languages, my hat's off to them. Churn, C-H-U-R-N would be what you want.
Say again?
I'll fix it.
Yeah.
Churn, C-H-U-R-N. There you go. At least in the US, I'd get it.
Okay. Okay.
I'm thinking that the new people have different ideas about the technical direction and will start to sort of perturb the path that the group may have been on. So I think it doesn't sound very good, but I would think that some new ideas would cause some kind of a change. I don't know what that would be. Probably.
Okay, let's have a look. There are several ways, I would say. It can stagnate, it can go down, but I'll actually also say it can go up. And then there will be a different pain but this is unlikely that this will go up. Then there really must be something different, but I would say it will here stagnate or even go down. Why? I mean, component teams, closed code, private code leads to all kinds of reduces the technical adaptiveness of the stack for sure. So let me just zoom out and see where we are. Yep, we are good here. So any questions so far before we go further?
I had a thought. It might depend on money. So if your organizational adaptiveness is going down, long term, that's bad for revenue.
Oh, definitely, sure.
In the short term, maybe you had an IPO and it doesn't matter that you're less flexible. You hit on the magic thing, you get a bunch of money, and if you spend more money on your engineers, maybe good engineers walk in the door. In spite of it all, not because of it, not because of structure, but in spite of structure.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sorry, structure in the broader sense, structure in that whole star diagram.
So I guess this model is not assuming huge external forces. So without any big external forces, this is what's likely to happen, right? So what do you mean, James?
Yeah, well, maybe I was just saying that, like, the companies often are not, the market doesn't always hold companies accountable as it should. The market is not a just arbitrator of whether or not they grow or not. They seem to grow in spite of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions?
So the technical slope is about the learning curve, right? That the engineers are currently at, right?
No. Not. I mean, they have a learning curve, but the technical it's the technical adaptiveness. So, for example, when they started off in before the spin-off, when they still were organized in component teams with closed code and everything, they usually in this situation there is a low degree of test automation, and the code is usually dirty in terms of clean code, right? How the whole thing is written and how the whole product is done and all the components is not nice. So it makes it difficult to work as a team, cross-component and cross-functional. And when you start it off and people start to clean up all this mess, it increases. So the technical adaptiveness increases. And then when you start to go back to component teams, it goes again the other direction. Does it make it clear, Dave?
Yeah.
Yes. So in other words, if there is a need to change somebody else's component, the manager of that component will say, no, our guys will do this for you. You don't need to worry about this. You don't need to learn our component, right? And due to that, and maybe just some of the reasons for that is because we know the code and we are expert in our code, but you are not, and therefore there is no reason for you to learn. We can do this for you, and though we are bottleneck, so that we introduce the delay, but you're gonna wait a little bit and you're gonna get what you need without learning.
That might be one scenario. Another scenario that at least in my experience is more present, I experience more often, is remember people initially asked for a narrow focus. So it's the people themselves that say, we want a narrower focus. And by the way, it's, if you are in this situation, like people say, we cannot cope with the broadness of the items, you need to deal with this, you need to narrow the focus, but it doesn't mean that you need to change the organizational structure, make the organizational structure more rigid. And you can narrow the focus in different ways, but by picking up maybe smaller items, but still customer-centric ones for specific teams. And this, when someone encounters this situation, this is actually a very good, how should I say, a very good opportunity for the managers back then to see, oh, okay, I see as a manager, I have the responsibility to increase the delivery capabilities of the teams. And there is obviously a weak spot. So that's why the managers of those teams, then they should invest into how to increase the delivery capability of that team, so that they do not consider it as too broad. But this too broadness, like, oh, this is too broad for me, where does it actually come from? Usually it comes from, oh, I have here an item that touches several components. Let me just, I don't like just talking without visualization. Let me just go over here and just start drawing something. You see something, right?
Yep.
Yes, we do.
So you see here like a software component 1. You see here a software component 2, and just let's say that the team has expertise in a few of those software components, 3, but so the team has expertise in this component, they can change it, but this one not. And remember, the test automation is low. So what does it mean for the team? What do they need to do to change this component if the test automation is low? They actually need to look through the code and understand the code and all the details of the code. This is really a high a demanding mental task to do all of that, and not only for one item, right? Because they pick several items per sprint. And because of this, they say, I cannot switch from item to item and have another software component 4 added to the bucket, because then I need to get into this component again and read through all the code. This is a demanding thing, and that's why they start complaining about it. People start mentioning all of this, that the focus is too broad, but what they probably actually mean is they cannot jump from one unknown component to another unknown component to yet another unknown component every sprint, because they cannot comprehend all of that. And this is usually, they cannot comprehend all of that is usually because of low test coverage for those components. So you need to go into this direction and fix this in order to make those complaints go away and to fix this problem. And this will increase the technical adaptiveness even more.
But by the way, the test coverage is a huge one. Another thing that will
Yeah.
happen is they'll start to unnecessarily drift their tech stack. There'll be technical tech stack differences that are arbitrarily different instead of different for good reasons.
Yeah.
I think the test coverage is the bigger one.
That makes sense to me. So so there's much less pain, toward the end as they, locally optimize and go into team backlogs around their narrow skill set.
Well, there's also another consideration about architecture and design, because some of the solution, if though they could be maybe quick to make, and some of the teams may feel like they get a grasp of the component and they can make a change, but inadvertently they make a change that would like degrade performance, for example. So there should be a big picture
Yeah.
view as well. So
Yeah.
how technical adaptiveness reflects to the reflecting the change of the structure in this case.
They'll add architects, and then that will further disempower the teams.
So that means more architects in specific specialized areas, right?
I mean,
Yeah,
somehow,
well-
who's going to maintain architectural sanity across the component boundaries? And if the teams are working across component boundaries, they'll do it like they should. If they don't, then someone will decide, oh, we need someone that does care and feeding of this, and now the team's like, they can't just go make a change because, oh, I'm going to talk to the architect, who actually ends up doing less and less code, and they become more and more clueless about what actually is happening on the ground.
That's right. Versus creating more automation in order to keep the code base up to the expected level of performance and flexibility.
Yeah. So let's go to our presentation. Back to the presentation. Do you see my screen again?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So this was the long answer about why parallel organizations and why you shouldn't just copy the old structures and on a smaller scale and call it parallel organization. Oh, by the way, and I also encountered, even if you do a separate business entity, I know a few CEOs of those separate business entities that complain about policies and processes that the original organizations puts on them. Because what happens usually is when you spin off a parallel organization, even as a business entity, then the only customer for this business entity is the old organization, and they put they say like a customer, right? And they put a lot of things on them, like, oh, you need money to pay your people. Here it is. We give you this amount of money, but we want you to do X, Y, and Z. So in terms of how to implement a less friendly parallel organization, so important is that line of organizational reporting must be separate from the traditional organization. I mean, that's, I think, obvious. Both organizations work out of one product backlog within the same code base, which is important. I will draw something on the Miro board in a second, and merge teams from the traditional to the parallel organization gradually, very slowly. Yeah, and then we can come to the Q&A. So let us go back to the Miro board and let's draw here a little bit more. So you should be able to see my board now. So if we have an old organization and a new one. Sorry, a smaller. This is the parallel organization. They definitely need to work out of one product backlog. And of course, across one entire code base. Why? Because if they don't, over time, if they don't work out of one backlog and over one code base, over time, they will diverge into two code bases, and it will become very, very difficult to merge those two. So you create even more waste, more duplication, more of everything. And if you don't use one product backlog for both organizations, then it's also, you don't know, for one, you don't know whether both organizations work on the most valuable thing or most important thing. And for the second part, it gets difficult to synchronize them to work on the same code base.
You're assuming this is one product.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you would do this for one product, sure.
How that is possible if there are different standards from those organizations about how things are getting done? Like, for example, how the backlog items look like. Because for all organization, they don't care about business business items. They just create technical tasks there.
Yeah, right. So in here, in here, there will be, let me zoom in a bit. In here, there will be like, let me do like this. There will be a group, like always, analysts, architects, and so on, who will coordinate all the work, split it into many small tasks and give it to component teams. So this one definitely will remain, and here it will look different. But they need to be synchronized. Otherwise, I mean, if they work on the same product, it will be really bad if they get out of sync. And it will be even worse because they will split the code base.
Where does the product owner sit in this? Which org would they sit in this picture?
Here.
And how people deal with the fact that the original organization, traditional organization, would have, say, less automation, less clear code and stuff, while parallel org will be relying on this.
Yeah, this would be one task for also the traditional and older organization to actually increase the test automation for their components.
Konstantin, what have you seen for fixing the reward system? Because if you don't want the legacy org to fight the parallel org,
yeah,
you need to create a reward system that the legacy org is incentivized to destroy itself and you know, eventually roll into parallel, right? Instead of the other way around, dig your heels in and we must kill parallel org, right? That would be the
yes. So in terms of this, what I have seen, I have really seen that. Hold on, let us go back to this one here. So the next cycle of employee reviews. That if you don't change if you keep the reward system as is, you're good until the next cycle of employee reviews. But this is where it gets dirty, when people get their first reviews, because people come voluntarily to the new parallel organization, right? They go all in, do the best they can to get the system going, and then they don't get what they expected. Don't even get objective feedback. Everything they get is something subjective. This is just what I saw. In terms of how to fix it,
that's the it's obvious all the ways that go wrong. What I have not seen is good fixes.
Good fixes, exactly. Yeah, me neither. But what I unfortunately I haven't seen good fixes. What I saw is there is an older article, I think it's called 6 Myths About is it pay? And I would need to look it up, where they basically describe that monetary rewards, I mean, rewards and promotion can be different in various ways. For example, one could be more responsibility, a higher status for something that people consider, other people around and you yourself consider as as higher, right? And there are monetary rewards. So fixing those monetary things, monetary rewards, or the other way around. If people have the feeling that they are underpaid, this creates frustration and disappointment. And paying them enough so that they get this frustration or get this stop thinking about the money is just removes the frustration, removes the disappointment about this, but it doesn't create how should I say motivation. Right, so there must be something else for the motivation, and of course I believe that's why Jay Galbraith in the STAR model says that the task, people, and rewards are much more important in today's in today's time, because tasks are the ones that should motivate people to do something, the work that they actually do, the purpose, and it should be somehow combined with the, of course, reward system. Like I said, unfortunately, I don't know, haven't seen any good implementations of that yet.
Yeah, me neither. I'm starting to
if
think
you
go
have, please share.
structure.
If you have, please share.
No, I haven't. I'm starting to think you have to go after ownership structure, though. You have to go way down to the root of the org, which
Yes.
they'll never do. Which they'll never do.
Which will never do, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And I would like to go back to the original question, like the why parallel organization, and I'm assuming the parallel organization is because everything need to change at the same time, the rewards, the people, the structure, the tasks.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So it's much harder to kind of do a transformation in an existing organization. Much riskier because you cannot change everything at the same time.
Yes. So exactly. So in this guide, it's a guide, parallel organization, and Bus and Craig, they definitely describe it as a parallel organization is not a proof of concept. It's really a parallel organization where you usually get enough freedom to change all of these things. And in my experience, you do get the freedom to change all of that. And at the same time, people focus on processes and structure the most, and either forget or just don't do it because of there's usually time pressure, right? Time pressure to get all of this going. And they say, oh, we will do that later. The next employee review is a year away from now. And later never comes.
I think it's interesting that in some cases, you might want to simply create a spin-out. Like, the assumption here is that you want the legacy code base, and that you can't just start greenfield entirely with new customers. So if you're doing a whole new something that's not the same product, it's a different product or a different element of the product.
Yep.
Then you could just throw away every bit of your baggage.
Sure.
The challenge here is, if you still got the same code base, then a completely separate org causes trouble. If you don't, single product backlog,
yeah,
single code base, you still have to kind of work,
force
that pain.
The thing is that at this point in time over here, so when you do all of that and you start on the green field, at this point in time, so it would be, let me change color, but it would be around here, right? That's what you say. You start everything off, you start a new code base, everything, you start all new.
Yes, for better or for worse. Yeah.
Yeah, for better or for worse, but you still have the people from the old organization.
Oh, well,
you
don't
still
even
have,
you
still
don't even have to do that. You just hire, you hire fresh. I mean, my point is, there is a one way out of the trap, but not entirely. There is the edge case of, let's just go make a startup. There is an edge case.
Yeah, there is. Yes. Yeah.
And
there is that.
And also on the second slide, you introduce that organizational agility or adaptiveness is much higher than the technical. Is this a kind of axiomatic, it's like something that typically happens? Is there a way to actually work on technical adaptiveness first and then jump into a parallel organization? Is there like technical adaptiveness in terms of automation, for example, employing new tools, creating cloud infrastructure, things like obvious for many modern organizations today, or many organizations today, like we can point out, look, those guys, in that company doing cloud architecture, why don't we do that and start that, and then raise the technical adaptiveness first, and then switch to parallel. What do you think about it?
I think there are people that try to do it this way, but there is a limit to that. I mean, technical adaptiveness also improves with increased software craftsmanship skills in the teams. So, and if you don't go cross-component, the software craftsmanship skills or the technical adaptiveness as such, test automation and the code quality remain the same. They don't go, I mean, they do not improve much. You need this cross-component collaboration of people in order to increase code quality. So yes, you can do that somehow, right? People actually do that. Yes, they focus on the technical part first, increase it a bit, and then they change the organizational adaptiveness, and they changed the structure over here so that that it goes somehow in sync. I think which way you go is really highly depends on the context that you're in, the company culture, the culture of the country that you're in, and so on and so on.
Hey, so this is David. So the idea though, right, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, or at least I'm on the same page, is that if you keep your, you know, the organizational adaptiveness, you know, up here long enough, the technical adaptiveness will drift this way, right, over time. Yep. Right. And then if you're trying to come up with a reward system to achieve this, it's got to be about keeping this up here, right? Oh, sorry, yes. I didn't mean to do that. So like, what would be a, you know, a reward you could give to leaders? I hesitate to say managers, but you know, whatever is necessary in the organization to keep the organizational adaptiveness, you know, in place, right? That's where the creative thinking around rewards should be, right? I don't have an answer for it, but I'm just trying to make sure I understand the model correctly.
I understand what you mean, yes. So here I would say it's not I'm not sure whether the reward system of the managers causes here the dysfunction or not.
Like, what if you had a reward for the managers that, if I mean, LeSS doesn't recognize management, right? It's like, it's optional, right?
Yeah.
But whatever level that these engineers report to, what if they had a reward that said something like, the higher percent product backlog items that, you know, your team is able to work on from an organizational global perspective, the higher your bonus will be next
year. Yes, I understand the direction that you're going. It could help, probably, right, to have this kind of, I mean, definitely would help to have a reward system that would support this. In any case, the idea of something doesn't work. I mean, if something doesn't work, it definitely needs to get fixed somehow, right? But the thing is, the ideas that come into people's mind at this stage is, oh, we have this now working for decades based on components and single function teams. We delivered this way some products, maybe not, it's not always the best experience doing it that way, but we achieved something this way. And the mental model is, but recently we changed this. This is what people remember. We spinned off and we changed the organizational structure. So we might want to go back. The point is here that system thinking doesn't happen at this stage. People don't take time to go see and do system thinking. And that's why they come to conclusions, as described now in this whole in this session. They come to such conclusions and make those changes.
I have a thought. If we're assuming that technical adaptiveness is beneficial, and I believe it is, what would be a measure of technical adaptiveness? And could we tie some sort of reward to ever increasing technical adaptiveness? I don't know, like happy customers that know that you're able to respond nimbly to what they ask for and deliver it with a short, like short lead time, like short lead times, high customer responsiveness, low technical debt. Like if you could find a way to reward that intersection of attributes, that's what I'm thinking.
That's kind of where I was going with percent of backlog items a team knows well. That has a technical cross-cutting aspect that you just kind of articulated very well there.
I have another thought, which is you got to remove the thing that keeps screwing you. And that is the bigger the fiefdom, the more my title, right? The more my salary, whether at this company or at the next company, I may have to exit in order to, leverage the fact that I now manage 1,000 people instead of 100 people. I think that power acquisition drives so much of executive behavior. And I think if you did nothing but got rid of that somehow, so that for whatever reason, that was not any more monetarily significant than becoming a better and better software engineer or something.
Yeah, but that makes the feedback in the yearly reviews less subjective, which is what Konstantin kind of talked about. Is that
the point? Right? But here we need to think whether those reviews need to be in place at all.
Yeah, right.
Right. So, do you want to review people this way at all or not? I mean, doesn't need to be.
I mean, if everybody owned, if you had a startup and everybody owned a portion of the company, and maybe let's say the shares were equal or related to seniority level that was based on could you pass certain tests or whatever, something truly objective. And if there was some sort of long-term, you actually made money based on the long-term health of the company, not the short-term, right? And then your compensation was just to be able to put food on the table, but your real benefit was from the product being successful. If you could somehow got where everybody was aligned in that way, maybe that would be resilient.
Yeah, James, you're putting some things now on the table here that I should say. I mean, we know or learned that culture follows structure, and this is usually true for big organizations, and but it's different. Usually different for startups, right? In startups, it's the culture that drives the structure.
Yes, but the culture even creates the foundational structure in much deeper roots than just how the product development organization works, right?
Definitely, yes, exactly.
I think what James trying to convey is that, like, if you had a way to compensate people on the success of their product, right? Like how well it does in the market.
Yes, and long term, not in a short term way. Like you get
whether
residuals.
It's a startup or it's a big company, whatever.
Yeah, it's like
right?
if I'm an actor in a movie and the movie does well, I still make money on reruns 20 years from now, if it's good.
Yeah, James, you're talking like Elon Musk, Angela Tesla, Joe Justice. Joe Justice talk about it a lot. Like how flat our organization in Tesla and how everybody's getting the kind of same wages, and there are roles, but there are no hierarchies.
Well, my frustration, where this is coming from, is a place of frustration, which is that it seems that you get the right senior executive in place, and there is support to do the kind of organizational structural change within the product development organization that you need. And all of a sudden, you get amazing changes. Now, all these things Konstantin talked about come back and kick you in the butt a year later, 2 years later, if they're not dealt with, right? But the other thing that happens is, let's say that senior executive stays in place for 5 years, right? Eventually that person leaves. And what's interesting is the culture that the skill set of that person seems to always be an anomaly. It seems that you might as well be rolling the dice on whether the next person is understands the kind of things Constantine is talking about. And inevitably they don't, and they're being selected by people higher up the food chain who, for whatever reason, are not incentivized or not knowledgeable enough, I don't know which, to consistently replace the person that left with someone who is of similar, depth of system understanding as to how do you properly run a product development organization. It's very rare that you maintain that person.
Yeah.
That you maintain that type of understanding when that person eventually leaves.
Absolutely, yes.
And
Also my experience.
and James, now you're talking Apple and Steve Jobs. Yes, good leader leaves and the company goes down. Leader returns and the company goes up again. Yes, that everything is actually rests on a good leadership.
Well, but think of it this way: if you build a product development organization right, and they make a bad hire on a software engineer who wants to work in his own little thing, doesn't want to work as a team, doesn't want to do, good unit test practices or TDD or test first development practices, that organization chews that person up and spits them out. The antibodies attack that lack of alignment, and that person leaves. And that organization, there's a virtuous cycle. It could go either way, but in this case, if you have good teams, they tend to hire people that are also good, and it gets better and better and better. That doesn't seem to happen at that senior executive. And then the question is, why? Which means there's some structural thing. We keep trying to fix things down here, and then we keep wondering why it gets blown up every 5 or 8 years when that senior executive changes. So then the question is, okay, so what is it you have to fix so that the next senior executive, like if the organization tries to hire someone who doesn't understand system design in depth, doesn't understand, software craftsmanship, doesn't understand, less in depth and the underlying reasons for it, doesn't understand organizational agility, that the organization would spew that person out, that they just wouldn't be successful. And you would naturally hire for good people. But that doesn't seem to be the case. But what would one have to change so that would be the case? I don't know the answer. But I think it's above the product development organizational structure. It's a deeper issue. That's the reason that we keep having to try to do this again and again and again, instead of us doing it once and it sticks.
Yeah.
It doesn't stick.
I think that this bit about the metrics that David and I are chatting about in the chat here, if you could figure out the heuristics that describe what success looks like what good looks like, James, I would think that we could, basically put metrics around the things that we want to evolve in the direction that we're interested in. And there ought to be a way to basically get a measure of what good is, like rather than the subjective hand wavy version of it, like look at would a happy customer, a short lead time, and the ability to be responsive to that customer be a good thing for business, senior manager? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. So how do you get there? And this would be, kind of lead them along to this way of thinking that the reason, we get to short lead times by having the ability to pounce on something that somebody says would be valuable if you could make that. And that would start to reveal technical limitations, technical debt issues, etc. But I would hope that there's a way that you could metricize what good, like a good organization looks like, and to then Joe Justice was my teacher. Um,
Well, I have a different one on this one. What you say we want to we can achieve a shorter cycle time from idea to cash, right? The point is, if you start to make those changes in a smaller product group, or you spin off a smaller organization. I mean, you don't do a spin-off and put right away thousands of people in there, right? So you start small and then you grow it over time. The thing is, with this flexibility and all the pain that comes with it, you can achieve in some time, you can achieve shorter cycle times. The question is, does the company needs it right now at this point in time? And what I experienced is that at this point in time, the company doesn't really need this, and so they don't see the benefit of it right now at this moment, but they see the pain. What would help at this stage is that if on the entire company level, there would be a demand to decrease the cycle time. This would automatically, I would say, it would automatically lead to different thinking in people to change all of those elements in the STAR model that we discussed today, in order to achieve this shorter cycle time. So let's say a company is like, the survival of the company is on the line based on the cycle time from idea to cash. And they need to reduce it, otherwise they need to close down. In that case, it would change. I'm pretty sure.
yeah, I don't think that these things are very hard to explain to cash-starved startups. It's the larger organizations that most of us appear to work with that this is not an existential crisis. It's just, maybe it's a manager's review at risk or something.
Yeah.
Or department.
Even if it's not a crisis, if we simply want, I mean, maybe not a crisis yet, right? But just let's say the CEO says we want to release more often, integrate more often, not just a few times per year, but way more often. Then there is a demand to reduce cycle time, and there is a demand to think differently. If you start going this direction, the first thing that you see is the technical rigidity of the tech stack, the low adaptiveness of the tech stack. Then what happens is then you start to grow this, improve this technical adaptiveness, and the organizational adaptiveness will also the organizational adaptiveness will also improve as well if it's somewhere below. It also this is the external or the bigger force that is needed there. And we are coming to the end, I believe. What I would like to or ask you to do is, hold on, I need to zoom out all the way and zoom in all the way here. I would like you to give some feedback. So here you see like Amazon star rating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you just could click the star there. The star and just write the session would have been exceptional if, so for me, something to improve for the next time, and the most interesting part for you that was there. That would be
is
really
5
helpful.
good? 5 is good, 1 is bad?
Yeah, like it at Amazon, yeah.
Okay.
You may want to click the hide cursors for people to feel.
Where do I do that? One.
Right there. Yeah.
Okay, good.